today's session here. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of it, but there's this new kind of innovative thing that's been happening. It's just in the corners of the IT world, and it's starting to kind of gain some steam called artificial intelligence. Have you heard about that at all? I mean, clearly, I'm the first person to mention that to you here at Cisco Live in Amsterdam, right? Yeah. That's good. You came here for the latest about artificial intelligence, and I appreciate your dedication. Now, artificial intelligence is not necessarily new. We're seeing all over the place different use cases inside Cisco, outside Cisco. I think everybody's trying to figure out what artificial intelligence is going to mean for them and their business and their customer interactions. And we're no different here at Cisco. And I had the luxury to kind of put my own spin on it, my approach to kind of consider how artificial intelligence might factor in to different aspects of network engineering, and I live in kind of this world of technical education, helping people understand technology. And so that's the approach I took at it. And we're going to look at it here in today's session, creating an experimental CCNA Mentor Chatbot as I explore some AI possibilities. My name is Preston. I'm a principal engineer here at Learning and Certification, and I started dabbling in kind of the software space and networking around network automation, and I was really excited to see how things could grow as we bring artificial intelligence into the place. And so what are we going to talk about in today's session? Well, we're going to talk about why would I, Hank, who loves to teach people about technology, build an AI-powered CCNI Mentor bot. So we'll hit that in just a second. Then we're going to spend quite a bit of time, because I want to show you kind of what I found was possible and what we're looking, and I want to stress, this is a prototype concept. This is not something that's yet shipping, though I'm hopeful that we'll see this kind of grow into capabilities and offers that we offer here from Learning and Certifications and Network Academy for our students. But I do want to show off in a demonstration kind of how it works, and it's as live as it can go, so hopefully you all bear with me as the artificial intelligence gremlins all kind of dive in at us. We'll explore that together. I'll then spend a little bit of time kind of talking about the components that we had to pull together to make all of this work. Right? There's lots of different ways to build AI architectures and AI applications, and this is just one. It is by far not the right way to do it or the best way. It's just kind of the approach I took as I've been exploring. After that, I mentioned we're looking at a prototype, so I'm trying to think about what might come next with this as this potentially moves forward into an actual product from our team here at Learning and Certifications. And then I've got questions at the end, but feel free, if you've got questions during, feel free to ask. If I can't answer it, I'll ask the AI mentor bot and see if they can answer your question. So, first up, why did I decide to look at building an AI mentor bot? And it really comes down to kind of one specific piece of information. There are a lot of you and only one of me. Right? I think we can all agree on that. I just look around here and there's a lot of you and one of me. And as much as I honestly would absolutely love to be able to sit down with each and every one of you and answer your questions about CCNA certification or automation and programmability and all these other things, I just can't. And I'm not alone in this space. Right, we have a lot of passionate instructors inside of Cisco, at our Network Academy partners, at learning partners, right, all over the place that are really passionate about helping people learn how to do technology. Unfortunately, there's not enough of us for one-on-one engagement. Also, even if you had a one-on-one instructor, somebody you could go through, imagine you're there, you're a few days before your CCNA exam, and you're doing some last-minute cramming, you're studying, and you find yourself immediately confronted with the fact that you never noticed that spanning tree was a topic on the CCNA blueprint, and you've got questions at 3 a.m. Now, generally, I don't mind if you call me at 3 a.m. to talk about spanning tree, but my wife's not really happy about that when the phone rings, right? She makes me get out of bed and go to another room. Wouldn't it be great if there was somebody who didn't have a wife that was going to hit them with a pillow when you asked them questions at 3 a.m.? So that's another great use case for a tool like this. It's somebody you can ask questions when you need the answers for to kind of bolster on top of what you might get from direct instructors or your colleagues and coworkers in that space. So the idea here is not to replace kind of that great interaction we have, right? It's really just to add on to it and provide more capabilities. So that's why I decided to build it. Now let's see it in action, right? A full-fledged demonstration of Hank's AI CCNA Mentor Chatbot. And so let's see how this is going to go. All right, So here we have, so I built the chatbot into WebEx, Cisco's chat platform, and we can see I've got it open here, and I've been chatting a little bit, getting him warmed up, make sure he's ready. The last thing I wanted was stage fright from my AI chatbot, but he's in place, and so I asked him initially, what do we have? I've got, hey, I'm really excited to learn about my CCNA, how can you help me? Well, I can help with some sample questions, some different ideas. I'm not just gonna scroll, we're gonna do some stuff live here, so let's go ahead and ask a basic question. Hey there. What domains are part of the CCNA exam? So what are the types of topics that we need to understand and know? And with luck, he'll give me a good answer. Excellent. Right. The CCNA covers several domains: network fundamentals, network access, IP connectivity, IP services. Gives me some good information. Oh, oops, locked my screen. So IP connectivity sounds interesting. What types of things do I need to know? Right? Give me the ability to explore. Now, you could look this up clearly in Google, you could go to our blueprint, or you can interact in kind of a natural language fashion, talk about there. All right, well, you have to understand routing table components, forwarding decisions, static routing, FHRP. These are some of the topics that are important in that side. And so you can kind of understand, we can dive deeper into all of these, understand what's part of it, kind of in that nice, instructive, natural language fashion. That's my favorite part about what we get out of this latest round of Gen AI and capabilities, is kind of that dynamic. I can talk to the computer like it's a friend. Now, I also know that not everybody wants to talk to a computer like it's a friend. Some people have actual real life friends, and you don't need one on the computer. I feel great for all of you. I need my AI friends to be able to be friendly with me and help. But we have this ability to dive in. Maybe I want to understand some aspects of how it goes in. What are the differences between a switch and a router? Right, so one of the core concepts on the CCNA is the difference between components, be able to understand and dialogue through those. And so the CCNA mentor goes back and says, all right, gives you some more information to dive in. Great question. Understanding the differences is really important. So we have some of the information that's in there as it goes in. And then maybe you've been kind of doing some reading and you've seen a term, multi-layer switch, right? Well, what about a multi-layer switch? What does that mean? So we get more details that are in here. Why I'm showing this is one of the aspects that I wanted to do when we explored this capability is to kind of build beyond what you might just get out of a search engine that has some AI integration. I wanted to be able to build on the topics that are there in a conversational fashion. So the way that the chatbot's been structured is it remembers the context, the conversation it's had with you, and you can continue to kind of dive deeper into topics that are there. You can delve in, hey, I didn't quite understand that, can you rephrase it? Well, it knows what it just told you, so it can make these changes as they go in a really nice fashion that is possible. And we can dive across different topics that are there. Maybe it's, we'll say, how does routing with OSPF compare to static routing? The other nice thing about artificial intelligence is it's really forgiving for typos and punctuation mistakes, right? So we go through, we get some different differences in here. So it helps you have that nice dialogue at your pace when you want it to have the information. Now, as you progress through your studies, you're going to come to a point where you think you're ready for the exam and you want to start preparing, making sure, do I understand this information that's relevant? And so we can have another type of an engagement with the CCNA mentor, the idea of kind of a back and forth Q&A. I'm getting ready for my exam. Can you check my knowledge on the topics on the blueprint? Let's start out with TCP versus UDP. And so here, you picture yourself, you're sat down, you're across from a one-on-one tutor, someone that's been helping you with this, and they're gonna start posing you questions. All right, sure, let's dive into a comparison. Here are some questions that you can answer. Figure out what are the key differences between TCP and UDP? How does TCP ensure reliability in data transmission? How do TCP and UDP handle data segmentation differently? Can you provide examples or applications and services? So here are some things that we expect CCNA candidates to be able to go through and do. And I'll go in and say, okay, well, let's see how well I know these. What are the key differences between TCP and UDP in terms of connection establishment? Well, TCP is connection oriented. It makes sure conversations are heard and replied. UDP doesn't care that much about connections. All right, so give it just some sort of an answer. So the bot's able to know, it knows what questions it posed me. I provided an answer. I didn't tell it I was going to answer number one. I just started answering the information that was there. And so with luck, it'll come back and tell me how good a job I did with this information. There we go. That's a good start. You've correctly identified connection-oriented. Gives me some more details to elaborate. And it says, hey, do you want to continue exploring, or do you want to answer the next question about reliability and segmentation? Nah, let's switch to VLANs and trunking. And so again, I'm sitting there, I'm working with this like I would work with a person. And that's the engagement model that we were after here. Hey, here's some good questions about VLANs and trunking that we can dive in. I like this approach. What's really nice about this is it's not just like a question and answer piece. It lets me check some knowledge, make sure that I've got it right, and it goes in. But the exams are based on multiple choice questions. And the mentor can actually generate thousands of potential study questions that we can go after that. And so let's try one of those. Hey, I have my exam tomorrow. I'd like some sample questions to practice how well I'll do during the certification. Can you help me? Oh, now it's went back to the free text. It didn't pick up on that piece. No, I need multiple choice questions. I'm in a demo. Give me what I asked for. There they go. All right, so here's a multiple choice question for me. Which of the following statements about a VLAN is true? VLANs are used to segment a network into different broadcasts, can only be configured on layer 3, reduce the number of broadcast domains, D, VLANs are limited to a single physical switch and cannot span. Please select the correct answer. So I can look at these, kind of figure out which one I think is right. I actually think it might be two answers on this one. Tricky little CCNA mentor on that side. I think it might be A and C. Who thinks that's right? Yeah, I got both of those. All right. I think both A and C are correct answers. Oh, it thinks only A. C, reduce the number of broadcast domains. It's false. It actually increases the number of broadcast domains because each VLAN creates its own broadcast domain. Look at that. It was actually right. I'm a CCIE and I got a question wrong. Nobody tell my boss. I'm going to pretend like I totally did that on purpose, where I actually just kind of very quickly jumped to the end answer on that. But look at that. It was able to kind of give me that context and jump in. That was great. Let's see. If you'd like, I can provide more multiple questions. Yeah. Let's do some more. All right, here's another one. What's the default VLAN for Cisco switches? My confidence has been shot for the entire rest of this piece here. Who thinks they know the answer to this one? What do we think? A. I think A is what I've heard. So let's see. A. Great. That is indeed the correct answer, and it's given me another one as I can jump right in. And I could do this forever. Eventually, a real person might run out of ideas for questions. The joy of the artificial intelligence is it can just keep going and generating some nice questions to help me get prepared. I can jump from topic to topic as it goes in and head into that. Now there's another aspect of studying networking and also going for your CCNA, hands-on practice. How many people are CCNA certified? Got a couple out there, great. When you take your exam, it depends on when you took your exam, but when you take your exam today, you will be presented with a handful of what we refer to as lab-lit questions. You're actually put on the console for devices and asked to configure some things. And so we want hands-on practice. Hey there, oops. How can I get hands-on practice? So the CCNA Mentor should come back and give me a few options. There are some great solutions. Cisco Packet Tracer, so it points me at that tool. Points me at Cisco Modeling Labs, formerly known as Viral, right? It even has some history involved in there. It knows that it's there. It can give me more advanced simulations. And then, ooh, I like this one, Hosted CML Lab. I can set up a hosted Cisco Modeling Labs provided by Cisco U. That's super handy, where you can practice networking concepts in a cloud-based environment, or if you've got physical. Hey, number 3 sounds really good. I'm interested in that. Let's say hosted labs sound awesome. Can you set one up? Absolutely, I'll set up a lab, please give me a minute. Took less than a minute, and it pops up and gives me the access information to a Cisco Modeling Labs instance hosted by our lab platform for Cisco U. Got a nice link, the credentials. Let's kind of dive into that. So I'll say access the CML UI. Here it comes. Go admin. Oops, 1, 2, 3, 4. Log in. I have a nice Cisco Modeling Labs server provided by Cisco U for me, forced on the back end where I can do some practice, but it's empty at this point, right? I'm a CCNA, I'm getting started, but I'd like a little bit of guidance on what I might need to know. So I'll switch back and say, thanks. I'd like to practice OSPF configuration with some routers. Can you give me an example scenario? Right? So I know what I want to practice. I've got a hands-on environment. Can you help me out with an example scenario? CCNA Mentor comes back and says, sure, I've got set up for you. Here's a scenario. We've got a couple of routers. We've got another router in place. Your requirements, please configure OSPF on all routers to exchange information. Ensure that R1 and R2 can communicate with R3 through OSPF. Verify the routers have learned OSPF in place. And then if I go down, and that one went through. So that gives me an example. I could start to build this out. All right, how about an example, oops, for VLAN configuration with some switches and hosts. So I can sit here and continue to ask for examples that I can now go build and represent inside there. So I get another example that goes in, switch 1, switch 2. I've got some VLAN information, VLAN 10 and 20. Access ports are done. Oh, and look, it just popped up. A CML topology that can be used to study this scenario has been imported into your hosted lab environment. Well, that's even better. If I switch back, sure enough, look at that. My VLAN configuration with switches has just shown up on that hosted lab that was given me. If I go ahead and jump in, I can look at it. I could start that lab up. And then that entire scenario concept, the instructions, it's been injected into the actual guide for the scenario. So now I can read through and have that all captured along with what I'm after and work through that information. So now I've integrated in the ability to answer my questions about the CCNA, study, get hands-on practice tied in with hosted services here from Learning and Certification in Cisco U, and have all of this information available for me. Pretty interesting, right? Useful for our studying capabilities. Now, when I demonstrated this and kind of put it together, I sent it off to some of the leadership here in Learning and Certification. I said, tell me what you think, what goes in. And as is pretty typical when you talk to your leadership, they said, great, but could it do this? And the could it do this for me that came from our VP, Par, here from Learning and Certifications, is that's fantastic, Hank, it's awesome, but you know, not everybody in the world speaks English, right? Can it communicate in other languages? And I said, I don't know, give me a minute, let me try out. Now, unfortunately, Hank only speaks one language. That would be English. I'm American. We're really lazy on the foreign language thing. You guys do it far much better than we do. And so I'm gonna pretend a little bit and say, okay, we'll go from English into French. So I'll throw a question in. Can you explain the difference between TCP and UDP? And then I'll cheat a little bit and grab this one and say, okay, we'll grab that and say, all right, let's see if I get a good answer back. Now, I've been talking in English, so I've trained it. It thinks I know English. Let's see if it'll switch over to French without me resetting it. It did. So I get this nice answer kind of out there. Now, I don't speak French. Some of you might. I'll cheat a little bit and just take part of this and switch back and see how well it did. So I'll put that in. Look at that. Sure. Here's an explanation of the differences that are in place. So now the bot, in addition to that, now we've enabled kind of bidirectional communication with people around the world, right? I've set it up and tested French, Spanish, Dutch, Arabic, right? German, but there's all sorts of languages that are just natively supported through translation capabilities that's offered and enabled by all these AI capabilities. Really nice feature set to be able to have in that space. Nice? All right, excellent, I love it. All right, let's go back to the slides for a minute, and we will kind of pick up a little bit as I've got about 10 minutes left. All right, so that was our demonstration. So what did it take? How did I approach building the CCNA Mentor bot? The first thing I'm going to start off with, and I'll be completely honest about this, is I am nowhere near what I would call an AI expert or an AI developer expert. I barely like to qualify as an expert in anything, and certainly not this one. So the way I approach this is the way I approach most things. It's just a little bit at a time, look at what other people are doing, take some classes, take some labs, and just kind of build and break things as it went. I also am a big fan of Python. So the way I made our CCNA Mentor here is I started with Python. That's the language I knew. And what's nice is there's a lot of capabilities that you can do to tie back in for all the other aspects that are involved here that works well with Python. Now, I needed to run it in a few different locations. I wanted to run it on my laptop. I needed to be able to run it in different development environments. I needed to be able to run it in a production-ish environment so I could do demonstrations here and have other people look at it. And so I Dockerized it. I containerized everything up. Needed an LLM on the back end, right? Large language model. So we're using OpenAI. Specifically, Cisco has its own instance of OpenAI called Bridge IT that has security and intellectual property and wrappers around it, so it's safe for us to use with company data. So that's the one that we leverage there. Obviously, I leveraged my knowledge about WebEx and WebEx bots to be able to have a nice, easy dynamic to pull those together. Cisco Modeling Labs gave me the ability to dynamically generate on the fly. So the AI is actually creating those network scenarios based on the requests that go in. If I ask a question 3 times, I might get 3 slightly different answers. And so I use Cisco Modeling Labs plus the AI to dynamically build these CML topologies that can then be loaded up and launched. And then one of the latest features we added was the integration of the Cisco U Lab platform. So as you're going through, if CML or if the bot suggests, hey, CML is a great way to get hands-on practice, you don't want to have to then stop and go spin up a CML-free instance and kind of go through all that process. You want to work right away. And so I said, okay, can we tie that in with our labs platform to automatically, like on demand, give you that piece? And our APIs and our programmatic capabilities that were in there offered me that ability. And so all of these kind of broke down into a few different pieces. I don't have enough time in this session to go through kind of a full technical explanation, and frankly, I wouldn't want to. I'm hoping to do a kind of a rebuild of this use case now that I've learned a little bit, clean it up into a case where it would actually be something I think other people might get value out of the architecture. But for now, these are kind of how I broke it down. The things at the top are just kind of rudimentary web-based applications that need to be done, Nginx and Gunicorn. But the actual components for the bot, right? WebEx Bot is a framework that I actually put together many years ago when I first started in automation to make it really easy to build WebEx bots and chatbots. So I started with that as a foundation. And then I had to build some libraries and interactions that I refer to as the AI mentor, right? you can talk to OpenAI in 1,000, 10,000 different ways. What makes one OpenAI interaction, or any AI, whether it's Gemini or Llama or any of these, is kind of how they're set up, the persona that's given to that AI bot. And so I built up an ability to say, okay, this is what CCNA Mentor knows. This is how they react to people. This is kind of the interaction, right? You're going to ask questions, and the goal is not just to give people the answer, it's to pull it out, right? We want to teach people something. We don't want to just kind of like shout it at them. And so I told it, hey, use a Socratic method for teaching, right? Don't just answer, if someone asks you a question, don't just answer it, give them a question that then will kind of tease information out. So all that's built into kind of this mentor persona. And then every now and then, the mentor would spit out a network scenario. I needed to be able to detect and process that scenario and turn it into a CML topology. So those were components that had to be built and tied back into the LLM. Because each one of those scenarios that are generated by the AI, they don't look the same. I was doing a kind of a practice run through earlier today and asked for something similar, and the CCNA Mentor got really kind of fancy and started throwing like ASCII art at me, right? Rather than describing the scenario and how things were connected, it was like a bunch of ASCII art, and I'm like, whoa, that was unexpected. Unfortunately, my topology builder didn't know what to do with those, and so I had to skip past them. But you never know what you're going to get with AI, and so I had to be able to react to those. And then lastly was the lab management integration back to Cisco U to pull these things together. So lots of kind of capabilities to come in on that side. All right, I'm down to 5 minutes. I think I've done pretty well. Let's kind of start to pull things together. So in review, what can the CCNA Mentor do today? It can do a lot of things for students that are studying for their CCNA. It has the ability to answer questions about the exam and the blueprint. Hey, what do I need to know? You probably, maybe you would, but you might not believe me when I say I talk to a lot of students that are studying for the CCNA or the CCNP or an expert exam, and I ask them, hey, have you looked at the blueprint? Do you know what the topics are on the exam? And they may have been studying for 6 months, and they're like, no, I'm just studying. And I'm like, wow, you really want to know what you're supposed to understand before you take an exam. It's like the first thing that's in there. And so I said, okay, let's make sure we can help people understand that. It can explain the topics in this conversational approach, like you're sitting down with another person. It'll ask you questions. It'll check your answer. If your answer's not quite right, it'll tweak it and give you like feedback and say, we want to adjust a little bit. So it's a nice dynamic for teaching. We have the ability to offer network configuration scenarios and then practice environments inside of Cisco Modeling Labs on top of Cisco U. So a nice kind of initial prototype set of features from an MVP. But there's so many more potential things that we're considering doing in this space, bringing artificial intelligence into the learning and technical learning area. And here are some of the things we're considering. Right? I would love to see CCNA Mentor, right? He's got his nice CCNA book here. He's hoping to get it signed by Wendell Odom at some point. I'm trying to line that up. But what if he knew and could tie back into your profile on the other learning activities that you're doing? And maybe because it's a Cisco and it's a learning tool, it understands that you recently went through and took a quiz, a practice exam for CCNA on Cisco U, and there were some topics that you didn't quite get right, and it could help you study those areas. Or maybe you're a Netacad student, and we can tie into your Netacad profile and help you kind of study in that direction. That would make it more personalized, like a real tutor, someone that actually is tied up with you and understands your personal history. There's a certain level of memory that it's set up with right now. If you talk for day after day after day, it doesn't forget what you've recently talked about, but the memory for any AI function is only so big, and the bigger it goes, the more it costs. And I'm not going to go into the costs of building and generating. It's irrelevant for today's conversation. But as the memory gets bigger, the cost of every question goes up. And so I want to figure out how to have a deeper memory, but that doesn't generate quite the cost that would be required for it to remember everything it ever talked to you about. And so we're exploring options in that space. All of my suggested labs are based on CML now. Packet Tracer has a whole library of capabilities that I'm looking at. And then I also like this idea, right? If you actually sign up and you have an instructor at college, or if you're getting instruction from a mentor through a learning partner, they might check in with you occasionally. Hey, I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. How are things going? Did you study VLANs like you said you were going to? Hey, let's have a little quiz about this, right? A little unsolicited to help students not fall off the bandwagon after some big event or a weekend that went in. Keep the momentum going on that side. So again, these are some of the things we're considering, what we might be able to add into this space. All right, are there any questions? Okay, we'll go here first and then back to you. Yeah. Say that again? I got you. So the question is this only available for CCNA or the other certifications? The prototype that I built is CCNA only, but it's just because I wanted a prototype that I could scope appropriately. The basic structure would work for any of the certifications, and I actually was talking with some of our leads about even up to CCIE and collaboration in other areas. So nothing would prevent it getting there, but today I just built the prototype for CCNA only. Question?
Have any idea of a roadmap when this launches?
Yeah. So any idea of a roadmap when it may launch and be available? Short answer is no. This was completely a skunkworks prototype project that I got permission to experiment with. The next phase from now is to go back and talk with our product managers to see if this is something that makes sense. Sessions like this is an opportunity to kind of gauge interest on that, which gives me a nice transition into this. So, a couple of questions from me back to you. Does this seem like something that would be useful, not just for CCNA, but for kind of the entire learning spectrum? I'm seeing some nods. I thought so. That one seemed like a pretty easy answer. Potentially a harder question. If this was something that we offered, is this something that you think that people would be willing to pay for a capability like this? Or is this something that you're like, oh no, it's great, but yeah, I'm not going to pay for it, all right? Let's hands. Who thinks that people would be willing to pay for a service like this? All right, I'm hoping my product managers are watching. All right, excellent. That's what we need to know. I'm not going to go deep into like how it goes in or the ethics and the cost and the power consumption, but all of these things do have those resources that have to figure out. So that's the other side for the delivery is we have to figure out how do we do this in a way that's sustainable, right? It's not like we want to make millions of dollars off of CCNA Mentor, but we have to do it in a way that we can make sure that it will be there long term before we go forward. And questions like that are a big part of it. All right, I've probably got time for one more question. Anybody? Yeah.
Like potential hallucination situations.
It's good. How do I deal with potential hallucination situations? I have a talk tomorrow on AI and network engineering, more in general, not just this, where I go into it deeper as well. But the short answer is hallucinations right now are a key part of what you just have to deal with artificial intelligence. There are a lot of strategies for dealing with them. The way that I've dealt with it here is I know they're there, and some of the use cases I've done, I remind people, hey, check my work, right? Make sure, don't just copy and paste this into the network. One of the things we're looking at in the future is how we can actually have a structured model for LLM that is kind of less hallucinations come out. Not none, but a lot of the hallucinations come because the way that the models were trained were from public data. And here's an honest example that I had. I was recently preparing for a demo, asking a question, and I asked it 7 times. 6 of those times, I got the exact right answer as expected. The 7th time, I got a wrong answer that sounded good, right? It was a nice hallucination. And I was talking with some of my coworkers about the hallucination, and we think we figured out where that one particularly came from. The question was about what was the, how to build a filter for OSPF traffic, right? What port, what protocol, all those things. The correct answer is IP protocol 89, right? The incorrect answer I got was UDP port 89. Sounds great. Totally wrong answer. Our guess is why it's wrong is some of the data that was trained, these models were trained on, were unfortunately brain dumps, sample questions, sample tests that are there. And I guarantee on some CCNA exam, we had an incorrect distractor answer on a question that said the OSPF was UDP port 89. So it was connected with that information and the LLM spit it out. And so we're looking at ways that we can actually just have good information in to make hallucinations less likely to come through. All right, with that, I want to thank you all for joining me today in this session. If you have any more questions or anything, you can always reach out to me. My contact information is generally easy to find, but I'm hapresto@cisco.com. We have a lot of really interesting content and sessions here at Cisco Live in the Cisco U Theater. Please stick around, take advantage of the time. Talk with other experts, talk with other community members that are around. Let us know what you're after. Particularly this AI topic is growing a lot. Slight shameless self-promotion. As I mentioned, tomorrow afternoon, I'm back in the theater talking more broadly about artificial intelligence and its impact on network engineers and the role. I don't have all the answers. I'll cheat on that side and let you know. But I'm trying to approach this the same way we approach network automation, right? Together with the community, experimenting, kind of giving some information. So if you're interested, join me tomorrow back here in the theater for that. But for now, take care and enjoy the rest of Cisco Live.